She was just 21, standing in her graduation gown, diploma trembling in her hand. The gym was full of cheers, cameras flashing, parents crying. And then her eyes caught on the back row. A man stood there, older, thinner, holding a battered sketchbook pressed to his chest. 19 years had passed since he disappeared without a trace. No calls, no letters, no answers. And now he was back. At the exact moment his little sister stepped into her future. This is the story of a family torn apart by silence, of secrets locked away in old sketchbooks, and of a porch light that carried 19 years of unspoken messages. But before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? I read every single comment, and I love the interaction with you all. He was supposed to be a ghost. On a humid June evening in Asheville, North Carolina, the high school gym smelled like floor wax and popcorn. A box fan chopped the air beside the concession stand, pushing the scent of butter and rain. There was thunder stacking in the Blue Ridge beyond the parking lot. Emily Miller adjusted the silver bobby pin in her hair, thumbed the edge of her program, and pretended her hands weren't shaking. She had waited 4 years for this walk across the stage, and 19 for a different kind of arrival that never came. On row D, her mother, Karen, sat bolt straight, a single white rose in her lap, because that's what she did every time the family gathered without him. Next to her, Robert Miller leaned forward with his forearms on his knees, jaw locked like he was holding back a tide. He had told Emily to enjoy the day, not to make it about the past. As if the past wasn't here anyway, stitched into the hiss of the scoreboard and the squeak of shoes on polished maple. At the far end of the court, a banner read, "Congratulations, Class of 2025. Someone had hung fairy lights that blinked unevenly, as if one bulb were dying. A porch light blinked in her mind, the night her brother vanished, though she had been too young to remember, and knew it only because the story lived in her like a seed. Daniel had been 15, a sketchbook in his backpack, a boy who drew mountains and never finished his sentences. "Row 7, please stand," the counselor called. Emily rose with the others, the hem of her gown brushing her calves, mortarboard tight against her hair. Her name would be at the middle of the alphabet, close enough to hear the applause build, far enough to feel each second stretch. She looked for her mother's face, found it wet already. Her father clapped 2 hard beats, then folded his hands again. Phones lifted to catch it all. The steps, the handshakes, the dip of a diploma into a palm, a tassel moved left. The PA crackled. "Emily Miller." She stepped forward. The gym narrowed, a tunnel of noise and light. She reached the principal, shook his hand, felt the sleeve of his blazer, cheap polyester, warm and dry despite the humidity. Emily smiled for the photo, then turned toward the bleachers, seeking her people. That's when she saw him. Back row, in the shadow between 2 banners, a man in a thrift store blazer and rain-dark jeans, hair longer than in the pictures, a day's stubble, maybe 2. He wasn't clapping. He just watched, as if afraid that if he moved, the moment would end. In his left hand, held against his side like a fragile animal, was a battered black sketchbook with a frayed elastic band. Recognition lit her chest like a struck match. The second feeling was a calculation. 19 years since the porch light blinked, since the search parties, since the missing posters that faded on the grocery store corkboard. No one else seemed to notice him yet. The fairy lights blinked once, twice, stalled on a heartbeat of steady glow. Emily's smile fell. Her diploma sleeve slid in her damp fingers. His face was older but mapped with the same angles. The mouth that never quite closed when he thought. The eyes that always looked like they were eavesdropping on the horizon. "Emily," the principal murmured, low, like he'd said her name twice. "Your tassel." She moved it and stumbled a step. Her mother stood now. Her father didn't. rain began to mist against the high windows. The man lifted the sketchbook an inch, as if the object might bridge 19 years by itself. Rain ticked against the high windows like 1,000 small coins. The scoreboard hummed, a low electric purr, and somewhere in the rafters a loose banner string whispered against metal. Sneakers squeaked, a chorus of ordinary sounds that made the impossible feel even sharper. In the roar of the gym, his lips formed a single word she didn't hear but somehow understood. Her name. She didn't know whether to run, to look away, or to hold the gaze and risk breaking apart. The fairy lights blinked again and went out. Something, the past, or fate, or a choice made long ago, had just walked back into the room. Daniel Miller had always been the kind of boy who listened for the quiet in things. At 15, he'd spend hours drawing the curved backs of the Blue Ridge, the way morning fog braided between them like loose thread. He kept a sketchbook not because anyone told him he was good, but because it was the only place where lines made more sense than words. In the Miller house, words were a currency spent too quickly. Robert spoke in verdicts. Karen in bandages and reassurances she brought home from the hospital where she worked nights. Emily, a toddler then, spoke in bright syllables and soft thunder snores. Daniel tried to be invisible when tempers found the kitchen. He'd wash dishes before anyone asked. He'd memorize bus routes, thrift store schedules, the pattern of the porch light that flickered when the wind pressed against the eaves. He had a paper route. He could fix a clogged sink with a bent coat hanger. He knew where the spare key was taped beneath the meter. He knew, even then, that knowing things was a kind of armor when you didn't have size or certainty. He loved two constants, Emily's laugh and the mountains. From a lookout off Town Mountain Road, Asheville looked like scattered coins in a green bowl. He'd sit until the light went syrupy, and the air picked up that cool, damp smell that meant night was climbing up the hills. His father wanted something different from him, not art, not quiet competence. Robert kept a laminated pamphlet about vocational programs on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a trout. Plumbing, welding, HVAC, work that made sense to hands. A future, Robert said, meaning a straight line. Daniel heard it and felt the line wrap around his chest like a strap. On the day he vanished, there had been a fight about a drawing, an inked panorama of the city from the ridge, with the river cut like a vein. Robert had found it, misread the hours in its cross-hatching as defiance. Voices climbed. A cup shattered. Karen stepped between them with a palm on Daniel's sternum and said, "Enough." It was, and it wasn't. Later, in his room, Daniel pressed his hand against the cool window glass and watched the porch light stutter. Moths jittered in the halo like static. He packed in minutes. Not much. 2 shirts, a pair of socks, a roll of bills he'd saved from the paper route, a bus schedule, the sketchbook. He left a note that wasn't a note, a charcoal thumbprint on the kitchen counter, and the porch light left on. It felt, at 15, like a message his family would understand. It wasn't. The first night away tasted like metal and soda syrup. He slept behind a bowling alley with the sketchbook under his spine. The first week, he learned that some names opened doors and others closed them. So he collected small, true skills. He could copy block letters like a sign painter. He could match a stain color on a wooden table with one glance. Years turned him lean and careful. On the edges of big towns, he became a shadow with a pencil. Day labor, bussing tables, sweeping sawdust, stretching canvases for other people's art. He wrote letters in his head to Emily, to Karen, even to Robert, and kept them in the sketchbook as drawings because drawings couldn't be forwarded or returned to sender. In one he drew Emily's hand as he remembered it, tiny, with a sticker stuck to the back. Daniel's one indulgence was libraries. He learned to love the hush that wasn't lonely. In Asheville, then in Boone, then Durham, Then farther, he found the same smell, paper, dust, old glue, and the same promise, that you could sit without being questioned if you looked like you were reading. He studied things without syllabi, landscapes, carpentry, bus schedules, how to be present and invisible at once. And always the sketchbook. He filled one, then another, but kept the first, the black one with the frayed band, like an anchor. It was the only possession that crossed every state line with him. When the years began to put weight into the sockets beneath his eyes, when his hair silvered at the temples, when the stories he told about himself began to repeat, he pressed that book to his chest and felt the straight line he'd avoided humming under his ribs. He told himself he would go back when he had something to show, proof that leaving had carved a better man out of the boy who couldn't breathe in his own house. But proof is a moving target. He drank less, then not at all. He found a tiny studio above a garage for a winter, chose a different name on the mailbox because the landlord didn't ask for much. He waited for the moment that felt like enough. It didn't come. What came instead was a date on a community calendar stuck to a coffee shop wall by a strip of blue painter's tape. Asheville High Commencement, June 7th. He tore the bottom inch off the flyer and folded it once. Emily would be 21. He had counted backward from the day he left and forward every birthday since. He bought a thrift store blazer that smelled like cedar patches and someone else's cologne, took a bus home, and told himself he would just stand in the back and see, and if no one recognized him, he would carry the sight quietly for the rest of his life. Then Emily looked up from the stage, and he knew there was no carrying this quietly. By the time Emily reached the gym floor, rain was a steady drum. She looked to the back row. The shadow between the banners was empty. The thrift store blazer, the frayed band sketchbook, gone. She slipped into the corridor, past trophy cases and the smell of wet cardboard, then out into a parking lot glittering with confetti stuck to asphalt. Karen called her name. Robert scanned the edges. Emily's eyes kept returning to the doors, expecting him to reappear like a cutscene. "Miss Miller." A man with a badge clipped to his belt lifted a palm. "Detective Luis Alvarez, cold cases." He lowered his voice. "The tip line is already lighting up. If it was him, he wanted only you to notice." "Why now?" she asked. "Thresholds," Alvarez said. "People choose them. Birthdays, graduations. And proximity is a drug." Karen reached them, breathless. "Was it?" "I don't know," Emily said. "He was here." Robert arrived last, holding the white rose like evidence. "You all right?" She nodded. Alvarez handed her a card. "If he contacts you, call me before anyone else." At home, the porch light threw a circle on wet steps. In her room, Emily folded the gown and listened to the house settling. When she turned for her bag, she saw it, a page from a sketchbook tucked under her door. Daniel's hand. Daniel's view from the back row, the fairy lights, her onstage, the principal's exact posture. At the bottom, tiny in the cross-hatching, RD7, row D7, where Karen had sat. On the back, printed block letters, "I'm sorry I missed you. I won't risk a scene. I'll try again when it's quiet." She went to the window. A sedan idled 2 houses down. Maybe. Rain hazed the street. At midnight, an unknown number buzzed. Lights? Emily eased the front door, flicked the porch switch off, twice. The old dinner signal. A reply arrived, saw. "Not safe. Tomorrow. Same time." Morning rinsed the neighborhood. Karen took an extra shift. Robert prowled the garage. Emily laid Daniel's relics from the closet box beside the new drawing and felt the weight of years in the thicker line. A knock. Alvarez, hat in hand. "No patrol cars," he said. "You didn't call." He texted about lights. He left this. She showed the drawing. Alvarez studied RD7. "He's steering the pace," he said. "Keep everything. Date it." Robert stepped in, saw the page. and the color drained. "You let him in?" "No, it was under my door." Robert stared at the street. "If he wanted to come home, he'd knock." Alvarez looked to Emily. "Tonight, the light only, if you feel safe." Emily swallowed her questions and the taste of metal that Jim had left in her mouth. Alvarez's eyes weren't pitying. They were the eyes of someone who had learned to hear what people didn't say. "I was at a niece's graduation when the call came," he added. "I figured I'd be less disruptive if I found you in the rain than in front of a row of grandparents." "My dad won't want you involved," Emily said. "He doesn't have to," Alvarez replied. "You're an adult. This is your boundary to draw." He watched her face like a medic checking a pulse. "There's a difference between contact and closure. Tonight, you got the first." They walked together to the curb. Karen took Emily's hand in both of hers, knuckles whitening, the white rose trapped between them. Robert kept scanning, jaw working. "If this is some copycat," he started. "I'll confirm what I can," Alvarez said evenly. "But whoever that was knew row D, seat 7. That's an intimacy you can't Google." On the drive home, wipers drummed time. Robert didn't speak. Karen hummed, without realizing, the tune she'd used when Emily was small and couldn't sleep. Emily stared at her reflection in the passenger glass until the streetlights turned her face into a series of brief negatives. Inside the house, they all paused in the entry, as if waiting for the air to declare itself safe. The smells were ordinary. Lemon cleaner, old books, the faint sweetness of the rose Robert set in a vase. But under them was something taut, like a string drawn too tight. Emily shut her door and leaned on it until her pulse slowed. She had been 2 when Daniel vanished, but she had inherited the house's rituals. The porch light blinked twice for dinner, 3 times for storm warnings, left on all night when someone was late. She could feel the code in her fingers even before the unknown text arrived. After the message, "Lights?" She paced the hallway, then stopped at the framed family photo of the 4 of them in front of the Biltmore estate. Daniel's face half turned, not quite looking at the camera. She placed her hand on the glass, then went to the switch. The house clicked and warmed as the bulb flared and went dark, flared and went dark again. In the quiet after, the refrigerator hummed, and the rain stitched itself across the roof. She slept in pieces. Every creak was a footstep, every car a herald. Dawn came pale and damp. She wanted to tell Karen and could not, wanted to tell Robert, and knew she must not. Instead, she made coffee strong enough to taste like resolve. Alvarez's knock was gentle, 3 spaced taps. In the kitchen, he studied the drawing the way a carpenter studies grain. "RD7, he murmured. "He wants you to know he was close enough to count." "He asked about lights. That was our code," Alvarez nodded. "Codes are how people convince themselves they're still part of the family they left." He kept his gaze soft when Robert entered. "Mr. Miller." Robert's reply was gravel. "Detective." He stared at the sketch. "That line," he cut himself off, then said quietly, "He always pressed too hard." Something in Emily loosened at that admission, evidence that her father's grief still had a door. Alvarez noticed, filed it without prying. "Tonight," he said, "only if you feel safe. If anything feels wrong, turn the porch light on and leave it on. That's as loud as a shout." The neighborhood Facebook group ignited. A woman swore she'd seen Daniel bussing tables months ago. Someone posted a grainy photo of a thin man in a raincoat. Comments multiplied into certainty. Emily muted notifications and went to the one place he would have gone, the library. On the 3rd floor, she pulled Daniel's freshman yearbook. The spine cracked softly. In art club, his photo wore the same half-absent mouth. Fresh pencil mountains were sketched in the margin, recent graphite. She touched them and felt heat in the page. At her table, a new note appeared while she looked away. Out back. 5 minutes. No police. In the alley behind the library, he stepped from the hedge. The blazer had dried to a dull wrinkle. The sketchbook was clutched like a life vest. "I didn't mean the gym," he said. "I thought I could see you and go. You left a drawing, so you'd know it was me." He glanced toward the street. "I can't stay." "Why?" "Because I'm not the only one watching our porch." "Who?" "Silver sedan, last 2 nights." "Not a cop." He slid an envelope from the sketchbook. Bus stub from Boone, diner punch card, a shelter intake form in another name, a library card from 2 states over, a Polaroid from the 9th grade art show with a later date stamped crooked. "Tell Mom I'm alive," he said. "Not Dad, not yet." A car door thudded. Daniel flinched. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "if the lights are safe." He vanished back through green. In the reading room, another note had appeared on the open yearbook. Check page 217. The page held candid photos, and at the bottom, 2 tiny rectangles like switches. Star, and a time, 2:17 a.m. That night, she waited in the dark. At 2:17, her phone buzzed. "Ready?" She flipped the porch switch twice. Across the street, a lighter flared, on-off echoing her. Tires whispered. A silver sedan rolled up and idled, windows dark. A second text from a different number. "Do not open the door." A broad figure stepped from the passenger side, set something on the bottom step, and left. When the headlights were gone, the porch was a square of shadow with a single object, a black rectangle. Emily cracked the door and reached out. Canvas and elastic. Daniel's sketchbook. She locked the door and opened the book on the table. Inside the cover, in Daniel's sure line, was their porch light, with 2 squares beneath, on, off, and a sentence meant for more than her, for Alvarez. On her way to the library earlier, she had noticed the same sedan, a scuffed rear bumper, one headlight yellower than the other, parked facing the wrong way. It might have been coincidence. It felt like a lens. The library's quiet had steadied her then. Now the house felt like a set with the lights off between scenes. She texted Alvarez a single period, their code for "I'm about to do something you won't like but can't stop." Then, with the sketchbook open, found a folded sheet tucked under the cover. A typed list of dates and intersections, years boiled to coordinates. Under it, a line in Daniel's hand. "If anything happens to me, give this to L. Alvarez." Emily shut her eyes. The house ticked. Somewhere, a car shifted into gear. Proof had entered the room, and with it, danger. She slid the page back, pressed the book to her chest, and listened to the porch light hum. Detective Alvarez sat at the Miller kitchen table with the sketchbook between them, latex gloves resting unused in his pocket. "This isn't just a message," he said, flipping to the folded sheet. "It's a breadcrumb trail." Karen leaned on the counter, arms wrapped around herself. Robert paced near the window, jaw tight. Emily whispered, "Why would he trust you? He doesn't even know you." Alvarez looked at her steadily. "Because someone told him I lost my daughter. He knows I won't dismiss ghosts." Robert spun. "This is not a ghost story. My son walked out. 19 years. He can walk back in." Emily pressed the sketchbook flat. "He says someone else is watching the house, the sedan." Alvarez nodded. "I saw it. Wrong side of the street, engine too quiet. They want him boxed in, or maybe they want you rattled." Karen's voice cracked. "Then why come back at all? Why risk this?" "Because he's done running," Alvarez said, "or because whoever's chasing him finally made home feel safer than away." He traced the typed coordinates with a pen. "These are intersections, gas stations, bus depots, a diner in Boone, each tied to a year. He's documenting his trail." Emily touched the page. "Or leaving us a map." Alvarez closed the sketchbook. "Tonight, we don't blink the light. If he comes, we control the pace. Robert slammed the counter. You're not making my house a sting operation. It already is, Alvarez said quietly. You just haven't admitted it. Silence thickened. Rain had stopped, leaving the neighborhood hushed, as if holding its breath. Emily thought of Daniel's handwriting, steady, deliberate, and wondered how many nights he'd rehearsed returning. She pictured him counting steps in libraries, tracing bus maps with his finger, sketching mountains as placeholders for home. Her phone buzzed. A new text. You have it. Good. Stay inside. Do not trust the car. No signature, but Daniel's rhythm. She typed, Safe? The dots blinked, vanished, no reply. Upstairs, Emily pulled the attic cord and climbed into dust and insulation. She remembered playing hide-and-seek here, Karen's voice calling through floorboards. She found the old trunk where Daniel's baseball glove still lay. Beneath it, another sketchbook, one she hadn't known existed. The first page showed a boy on a bike, a mountain behind him, porch light in the corner. Date, July 2006, 2 weeks before he vanished. Alvarez joined her, flashlight steady. He stashed this before he left, he said. Proof he planned it. Emily hugged the book. So he meant to disappear. Not forever, Alvarez murmured. Just long enough to breathe. A car door slammed outside. They froze. Through the attic vent, Emily saw the silver sedan parked under the streetlight. 2 silhouettes inside. Waiting, she exhaled. They know he came back. The next evening, Alvarez parked 3 blocks away and walked in through yards. Emily watched from the porch window. The sedan remained, engine ticking, lights off. At 10:14 p.m., the porch bulb flickered, once, twice. Though no one had touched the switch, Emily's chest seized. She rushed out, Alvarez at her shoulder. No one stood by the switch. Then she saw the extension cord snaking from the hedge. Someone had wired the porch light to a remote. A trap. A voice behind them. Don't panic! Daniel stepped from the shadows, thinner than she remembered from the gym. The sketchbook clutched to his chest. It's me. Alvarez pulled him inside fast, shut the door. Robert erupted. You think you can just walk in after 19 years? Karen covered her mouth, tears spilling. Daniel held up the sketchbook. I don't have time. They're watching. I've been followed since Boone. Every diner, every shelter, somebody's been one step back. Emily whispered, Who? He shook his head. I never saw faces. Just the car. Sometimes 2. Always the same rhythm. They'd let me think I was free, then show up again. Alvarez spread the type sheet of intersections. These people leave traces. You gave us a record. I gave you bait, Daniel said. If they think I trust you, maybe they'll blink. Robert spat. Nonsense. You're paranoid. Daniel met his eyes. Dad, I disappeared at 15 because you wouldn't see me. Now strangers do. The words cracked something in the room. Karen whispered, What do they want? Daniel opened the sketchbook to a page Emily hadn't seen. A drawing of a basement door, padlocked. Underneath, numbers 917. Alvarez stiffened. 917? That's a case file. An unsolved missing person from Asheville. Girl, 13. Vanished 2 months after Daniel. Emily's stomach nodded. You knew her? Daniel looked down. She wasn't the only one. They watched me because I left when they wanted someone to stay. The sedan's headlights flared through the curtains. Tires crunched gravel. Alvarez grabbed his radio. They're moving! Daniel shoved the sketchbook into Emily's hands. If they get me, don't stop reading. Every page is a door. Then the porch light flicked twice, on off, without a hand touching the switch. Headlights bled across the Miller living room wall, stretching shadows until they looked like figures, pacing. Alvarez flattened himself by the curtain, gun unholstered. Karen clutched Robert's arm, whispering prayers under her breath. Emily held the sketchbook so tight her knuckles blanched. The sedan idled, humming like a giant insect. Then, as if in slow ritual, Its passenger door opened. A tall man in a hood stepped out, walked to the curb, and dropped a padded envelope on the Miller mailbox. No words, no glance. He climbed back into the car. Tires whispered away. Alvarez sprinted out, too late to catch a plate number. The sedan melted into rain-dark streets. He carried the envelope inside, slit it with his pocket knife. A stack of photographs spilled out. Emily bent forward. Each photo showed Daniel, bus stops, shelters, a library corner, every city on his list, taken from a distance. Someone had tracked him for years. One photo froze her. Daniel at 17, thinner, eyes hollow, walking out of a convenience store. The date stamp, October 2007. 2 months after the missing girl Alvarez had mentioned. Case file 917. Daniel's face tightened. "I told you." "They've never stopped." Alvarez tapped the envelope. "These weren't warnings. They're records. Whoever delivered this wants us to know we're being watched." Robert snatched a photo. "You staged this. You had someone follow you. Make yourself important." Emily's voice sharpened. "Dad, look at the angles. Daniel didn't take these." Karen whispered, "Then who has? And why send them now?" Daniel reached for the sketchbook. He flipped to the basement drawing. "Because I saw something the night I left, something I never told." Silence pressed in. He pointed at the cross-hatched padlock. "There was a house near the bus station. I'd cut through its alley. I heard voices below, a girl crying. I went down the steps and saw a basement door chained shut. I knocked, whispered. The crying stopped. Then headlights swept the alley and I ran. I thought I imagined it, until months later when I saw her photo on a missing poster." Alvarez froze. "The girl from file 917? Daniel nodded. "I didn't say anything. I was 15, scared, and when I saw the posters I thought, if I told, they'd ask where I'd been, why I didn't call home. I thought it would kill Mom if she knew I'd been that close and ran." Emily's stomach twisted. "So you carried it? For 19 years. "And they carried me," Daniel whispered, watching, waiting to see if I'd talk. Alvarez picked up a photo, jaw clenched. "Which means tonight wasn't a threat. It was a reminder you're still theirs to silence." Outside, tires hissed again. The sedan had returned, idling at the corner. Alvarez snapped the curtain shut. "We move. Now." Karen grabbed Emily's hand. Robert resisted. "We're not abandoning the house." "This isn't a house anymore," Alvarez said. "It's bait." Daniel pressed the sketchbook into Emily's arms. "Every address in there matters. If I vanish again, follow it." Emily shook her head. "No, not again." But Daniel's eyes said he expected nothing else. The porch light blinked once, without a hand near the switch. Alvarez bundled them into his car, headlights off, until they hit the main road. Rain streaked the windshield. Emily kept the sketchbook open, fingers tracing lines Daniel had drawn years earlier. Coordinates, basements, bus stops. Each page felt like a confession. At the station, Alvarez spread the contents across a corkboard. Photos pinned in rows, Daniel's map taped beside them. Karen stared, hollow-eyed. Robert refused to sit, fists jammed into his jacket pockets. Emily noticed the tremor in his hands. 919, Alvarez said, pointing to the basement sketch. "The girl's case. If Daniel saw her locked door, the house might still exist." Daniel leaned on the table. "It's gone." "Bulldozed years ago." "Maybe," Alvarez replied, "but records don't vanish. Permits, demolitions, someone had to approve it." Emily's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't trust him. Underneath, another line. He already knew about 917. Her throat tightened. She showed Alvarez. His eyes flicked, unreadable. "They're trying to split us." Robert seized on it. "Of course. He shows up with sketches. The detective just happens to appear at graduation, and now we're supposed to believe coincidence. He's in on it." Alvarez's jaw worked. Your son trusted me. That's enough. Emily searched his face. Doubt wormed cold and slick. But Daniel touched her arm. He's right. They've been using our porch code. How else would they know? Karen whispered. We can't turn on each other. That's what they want. Daniel flipped another page, a gas station logo drawn from memory. This was where I saw the sedan first, Boone, 2009. Alvarez pulled a file. There was another disappearance that month, male, 19, clerk at that station. Emily's pulse raced. It's all connected. The board now held 3 threads. Daniel's sightings, 2 missing teens, the basement door, a triangle, at its center, Asheville. Robert muttered, No, this is madness. Emily snapped. Dad, look at the photos. Look at his face. They stole half his life. Daniel whispered, and they're not done. A thump rattled the station's glass. Alvarez drew his weapon. Outside, the silver sedan idled across the street, headlights fixed on the precinct windows. A second envelope slid under the door. Emily picked it up with shaking hands. Inside, a single Polaroid, their porch light glowing, and beneath it, written in block letters, You're next. The Polaroid trembled in Emily's hands. The porch light glowed in its frozen square, menacing in its ordinariness. Karen whispered, They know where we live. Robert slumped into a chair, his defiance cracking into fatigue. Daniel sat across from him, hollow-eyed, as if the photograph had stolen the little strength he had left. Detective Alvarez laid the photo flat on the table. This isn't just intimidation, it's permission. They're telling us they can come and go as they please. He glanced at Daniel. You were right. They've been circling you for years. Emily clutched the sketchbook. Then what do we do? How do we stop them? Alvarez softened his tone. We may not stop them tonight, but we can stop them from tearing this family apart. His eyes swept across the table. That's how they win, when we mistrust, when we fracture. Robert's gaze locked on Daniel. Why now? Why after 19 years? Why at her graduation? Daniel's voice was rough but steady. Because I couldn't stay gone forever. Because I saw the date and I thought, maybe a milestone could forgive a lifetime. He looked at Emily. I thought you'd be proud. Tears blurred her vision. I am. But you left me with questions I didn't know how to ask. Karen reached across, took both their hands, squeezed until her knuckles whitened. He's here now. That has to matter. For a moment silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the fluorescent light overhead. Emily traced the edges of Daniel's sketchbook, feeling the grooves of years. She saw him not as the boy who vanished, but as the man who had survived, carrying the weight of a secret no one else could bear. Every drawing was an apology, Daniel said softly. I just never found the courage to send them. Alvarez cleared his throat, grounding the room. The sketchbook will go into evidence, but I'll make sure copies stay with you. His truth deserves to live here too. Robert finally exhaled. I should have looked harder. I told myself he was gone, and maybe it was easier that way, but I see now I gave up before I should have. Daniel's eyes softened. I thought you hated me. I was afraid, Robert admitted. Afraid you'd make me face what I couldn't fix. The words cracked something open. Not forgiveness yet, but possibility. Emily clung to that. Morning seeped through the blinds, gray and unsteady. Emily sat with the sketchbook open on her lap. Each page told a fragment of a journey, bus stubs, faceless diners, alleys where he'd slept. She traced a page where Daniel had drawn her as a child, holding a balloon. The balloon string was frayed, but she was smiling. She pressed the page to her chest. Daniel stirred on the couch. You found that one. It's proof, she whispered, that even far away you kept me with you. Karen brought coffee, her hands steady for the first time in days. Whatever comes, we face it together now. E.B. Robert stood in the doorway, his frame bent but his voice clearer. "I may not know how to be the father you needed, but I can try to be the man who doesn't fail you twice." Daniel nodded, emotion tight in his throat. Emily leaned against him, her diploma still on the counter, symbol of an ending and a beginning. "We don't erase 19 years, she said, "but maybe we stop letting them own tomorrow." Alvarez entered, coat in hand. "The car's gone, for now. They'll surface again, but you've already weakened them by surviving, by speaking, by refusing to stay silent." He set his card on the table. "Whatever happens, you don't face it alone." As the family walked to the porch together, the morning air smelled of wet earth and possibility. The porch light was still, unblinking, humming gently in its socket. Emily lifted her chin toward it, her own silent vow. Never again would a flicker mean absence. Daniel whispered, "I thought I'd come back to ashes. Instead, I found embers." Karen placed her arm around both her children. "Then let's build a fire they can't put out." Robert reached up and for the first time in 19 years twisted the porch light off with his own hand, not as a signal of fear but as a promise of peace. The family stood in the doorway, not healed, but whole enough to begin. Behind them the sketchbook lay open on the table, its pages breathing with memory and survival. The story was unfinished, but it was theirs again. Emily looked at Daniel and whispered the only truth that mattered. Welcome home. He was supposed to be a ghost. In the days after the envelope and the Polaroid, the Miller house learned a new quiet. Not the brittle hush of grief, but a working quiet, like a shop with lights on before opening. Robert fixed the loose stair tread that had clicked since Daniel was 15. Emily taped the porch code above the switch, then took it down. They didn't need signals now, they needed habits. Alvarez came and went like weather. He logged the plate of the silver sedan, then another, then two men who pretended to jog. He did not promise arrests. He promised attention. "Some truths take time," he told them on the porch, coffee in his hands. "The important thing is that the time doesn't take you." Daniel took Emily's old room. His felt like a museum. He apologized for the smell of bus stations trapped in his clothes. He apologized when he startled at the dip of a floorboard he'd forgotten. He apologized for apologizing. And in the odd hours between midnight and morning he wrote, not drawings, words poured onto yellow pads. On the first page he wrote, "I left to breathe. I returned to live." One afternoon, Emily took him back to the high school gym. Custodians, coiled cords, confetti still clung to rafters. Daniel stood in the shadowed back row and raised his hand as if to measure the distance to the stage. "I thought that if I saw you walk," he said, "I could hold the rest from far away." "You don't have to hold it alone," she said. "Not anymore." They drove past the library. In the alley, rain coaxed weeds between bricks. Emily ran her fingers along the yearbook's cracked spine in her lap. "You kept me as a balloon," she said, smiling through damp eyes. "I'll keep you as a compass." At night the porch light hummed steady. No blinking, no hidden wires. The sedan returned once, idled, left. A neighbor's doorbell camera caught its plate. Alvarez didn't gloat. "Paper beats shadow," he said. "Eventually." Karen asked Daniel to teach her his lines, cross-hatching for weight. A smudged thumbprint as signature. Robert, restless, took to walking the block with a flashlight and a dog he claimed he didn't want. Sometimes he stopped beneath the streetlight and looked back at the house like a survivor eyeing shore. On Sunday, they set the sketchbook on the table and turned pages. They paused at the basement door with the drawn padlock. "We'll carry this part with you," Emily said, "until it opens or we can finally walk away." Daniel nodded. "I don't need a villain to be punished to come home," he said. "I needed permission to stop punishing myself." Alvarez left copies of the file numbers. "You'll hear from me," he said. "It may be a whisper before it's a headline." Summer leaned in. Cicadas tuned the evenings. The house began to sound like itself again, a refrigerator that sighed and caught, a door that complained in the same syllable every time it closed, the click when the porch bulb warmed. Emily boxed her diploma with the yearbook and on top placed one of Daniel's pages. The gym seen from the back row, fairy lights like a small galaxy. She realized those lights had never blinked to haunt her. They had blinked to warn her to look up. The night before Daniel's first job interview, finished carpentry off Riverside Drive, Robert knocked. He held out a scuffed tape measure. "Your grandfather's," he said. "A good measure isn't inches," he said. "It's what you're willing to make true." Daniel turned it over in his hands as if it were a relic and a tool at once. In bed, Emily watched the graduation video. There was the moment, heartbeat small, when she turned toward the bleachers and saw a ghost at the top row. She paused, then pressed play, and watched the man turn back into a brother. She closed the app and lay listening to the ordinary electricity that stitches a house together. On interview morning, the porch light was off. Someone had remembered before dawn. Daniel stood beneath it, palms open, and looked up into the glass. He didn't ask it for permission. He thanked it for waiting. Emily stepped beside him. "What now?" she asked. He smiled, small, real. "Now we add pages that don't need dates." They walked to the truck together. Across the street, a new neighbor waved, small proof, you notice, only after danger moves on. Karen called after them to bring home milk. Robert pretended to complain and handed Daniel the keys. At the curb, Daniel paused and looked back at the house, the light, the door that had always been the same. He touched the frayed band around the old sketchbook, not a shield now, but a history, and took a breath that didn't hurt. He had been supposed to be a ghost. Instead, he became what the porch light had always been, a steady human proof that someone is expected and still expected, and finally home.